What do you think of when you think of the year 1978? You might think of the new fashions that were introduced. You might think about how it's almost the 80s, or even the new innovations or new technologies. One thing you probably don't think about, though, is one of the deadliest events in human history that you've probably ever heard of. This event is known as the Jonestown Massacre. And when I saw the prompt for this informative speech, I struggled to find something that I truly wanted to talk about and discuss. I looked through different locations I could talk about, such as places like Dubai or other interesting parts of the world, but I really wanted to explore something historical. So I looked through all these different historical dates and different events, such as events during World War II, before that, more recent historical events, and then I stumbled upon the Jonestown Massacre, one of the most horrific events in the human history, and I had never even heard of it. And while this tragic story is a difficult one to tell, it's very important to remember historical events like this so we don't actually end up repeating them. This Jonestown Massacre was one of the most vicious events in our modern world because of the history behind it, the fallout from the massacre, and you can follow the life of the mentally unstable leader to see truly how it became this way. But what truly led these 900 members of this cult to commit one of the largest mass suicides in the history of the world? So, it started as a simple church in San Francisco, started by a man by the name of Jim Jones. This church was a very normal, helpful church with donations going to the needy, free dining, and it was one of the first racially integrated churches in all of San Francisco. History.com states, estimates of group size vary. A 1977 exposure by New West Magazine put the number of People's Temple members at 20,000. And as the congregation grew, Jones became more violent, and he started to have very outrageous claims saying he could heal cancer, bring the dead back to life. And under heavy inspection, 1,000 members moved to the Socialist Society in South America. And these members that decided to move with Jim Jones worked day and night in blistering hot conditions. Leo Ryan and some other news reporters kind of got wind of this camp that was going down, so they went to investigate. And the members that were currently working at the camp, the followers of the cultist Jim Jones, as these reporters began to leave, went and gunned all of them down. And Jim Jones began to panic, worrying that more people were going to come and take down his cult that he had built so well. So he forced 900 members of his cult, without them knowing, and some of them did know, to drink cyanide-laced fruit punch. And this is where one of the very famous sayings, drinking the Kool-Aid, or don't drink the Kool-Aid, originates. Jim Jones, after that, then kills himself after just committing this mass suicide with 900 cultist members. So, next, to really understand how this came about, you must follow the life of the very mentally unstable leader. He was born on May 31st, 1931, in rural Indiana. He began working as a self-ordained Christian minister in small churches around Indianapolis. In order to raise money to start a church of his own, the charismatic Jones tried various ventures, including selling live monkeys door to door, says History.com. He also became a bisexual in his youth and grew up in a small town with less than 20,000 citizens. And you can imagine how these 20,000 small country people kind of viewed his life. And he thought at one point he was biracial, which in fact wasn't true at all. He was 100% white. Then he started to make these outrageous claims that his dad would beat him and that he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and both of these were proven not to be true at all. Jones then got married at the age of 18 and went to a pretty prestigious university to become a doctor. 10 years later, he opened up his first church. And after this, clearly you know where the story went. And finally, so we can finally understand why this tragedy is so serious, is the aftermath. So all these bodies were stuck in South America. People didn't know what to do with them. So military came in to transport these bodies back home because people's families wanted to see their kids and bury them the proper burial that they deserve. And the humid, disgusting conditions of the temple led these bodies to become grotesque and rotting and just an awful scene. Many first responders developed PTSD just from seeing the carnage that unfolded in front of them. They weren't there for the actual suicides or killings, just seeing all these bodies piled up created PTSD for these first responders. Oakland actually still has a memorial for the Jonestown Massacre, so everyone can try to remember about this event. A first responder states, "The stench. I will never forget the stench." The stench was apparently so pungent you could smell it from miles away. It was one of the strongest smells that anyone had ever smelled. This tragedy is one that we must take to heart, to not forget who we are impacted by, and how this disgusting act can change us forever. In conclusion, Jim Jones was a very mentally unstable man who believed he had more value than others did. He thought he was above us. He thought he was a better person and a true leader. This disgusting massacre has one of the most interesting stories, and it really isn't too widely explored. If you look at the history of both Jones, the massacre, and even the fallout from these, you can see truly why this is one of the worst events in human history.